like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya? I'm like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya?
Can you imagine all the things that I've seen? I've been through crazy routines. I've had some nightmares and dreams, but I keep chasing all my goals like I was part of a team. I'm stacking brick on top of brick until I start a regime. I'm getting stronger. I couldn't hold myself back any longer. And them doubters trying to say I wouldn't make it, they was wrong. I take my heart and take my soul and put it all into this song. And if your energy is bad, then just proceed to move along. I'm a woman with integrity, dignity, and energy. I fellowship with friends and stay away from all the frenemies. And if it doesn't kill you, then it only makes you better. I don't care about materials, cause they can never measure. I'm a leader and a diva, I'm a teacher and a preacher. I'm a loner and I used to be a stoner. Now I'm either on my grind or trying to reach another level of this thing we call a life. No more stress and no more strife, I'm just trying to get it right, yeah. Said I'm just trying to get it right.
I am the great one, I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya? I'm like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya?
I am the sun god Ra. I am the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar. I come from the bloodline of Tutu Amen. Worshiping the sun like I'm Akhenaten. Addicted to wisdom like it's Oxycontin. Leading the army like I'm Joseph Stalin. Toes are rotten. They have fallen like Adam in the garden of the knowledge. Stick to the ancient writers, you'll be solid. Like the God Happy, I'm happy and I flow like the Nile. Christ consciousness since I was a child. From the Milky Way, they call it the Great Cow. Like a waterfall, I flow on and on. Like the sun god, I rise at dawn. I told you,
I'm like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya? I'm like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya?
I'm just trying to be rolling through the hood and blowing good. And I've been grinding all my life, understand that you'll probably be overstood. I'm kicking back, celebrating like every day. Off top like a toupee, I'm chilling and I'm drinking on some Bombay. There's a real one over here, I'm a warrior. Don't worry about what we be doing over here, just get your dollars up. Your girl gon' probably follow, bruh, when she see him moving like a boss. Skirting off fast, leaving haters and exhaust. I'm on GOAT status on top of the mountain at the peak. In any game, I'm the MVP. Go and ask about me, and I bet you'll find nobody works harder for the pennies, nickels, dimes, and the quarters. I'm always on the come up, and I wish a perpetrator would run up. Get popped like a freak about to get done up. This movement that I'm on, crabs in the barrels want none of. I'm just elevating higher like KD when he played for the Thunder.
I'm like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya? I'm like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya? I'm like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya? I'm like the sun god Ra. I'm like the moon god Allah. I am the great one, Asa. I like to fly high in the sky from afar, don't ya?
All right, Uncle Justin Neb Hotepu. This is Benkau Shakim Ra Allah, and I'm coming to you live to have a discussion today about the meaning of the Egyptian Ba, Ka, and Sahu. So this is your first time here on the Amin Ra channel. Thank you for tuning in. If you're on Facebook, thank you for tuning in. I wanted to talk about this because I recently lost somebody very close to me, And I was having a hard time, thinking about the purpose of life and the meaning of life in the face of death. And death always kind of readjusts our perceptions and our viewpoint on life and what the purpose of life is. And it made me actually think about this story that's a very rare story in Egyptian literature. It exists on a single manuscript. So without that one little papyrus, we would have missed such a wonderful, powerful, inspirational story. So I'm very excited to actually analyze this story from multiple perspectives. I want to talk about the nuances of the story and the literary devices contained in the story, and also what lessons I got from the story, and maybe other lessons that you may get from the story. So, with all of that being said, the headline for this particular live stream is basically a simple question: what is the soul? How would you define what a soul is? So, whether you come from a Christian background, an Islamic background, a Hindu, maybe a Hinduism background, or maybe even an atheist background, a Western background, or Eastern background, depending on what school of thought you have been educated into, you may have a different definition for what a soul is. I'm going to define it like this: the soul is nothing more than a template of experiences that is immortal and separate from the body. I'm going to say it one more time. The soul is a template of experiences which is immortal and separate from the body. So, this is why, for example, we have what you call arrested development. We can have somebody, two individuals, let's say we have two women. Both of these women are the same age. They were born on the same day, same month. They're both 45 years old. Yet one woman is mature, responsible, has a successful, stable family life, is spiritually inclined, is able to manifest what she wants out of life, and is able to basically radiate and be light to those around her, to bring peace to her husband and her family. Now, we have another woman who's the same age, who's the opposite. So she's not emotionally mature. She is hyper reactive. She doesn't know how to control her emotions. She doesn't have a stable family life at all. She's not able to manifest what she wants out of life, etc. Now, these two women have a body, and their body is the same age. It could even be made out of the same material, because we are all made out of what? Hydrogen atoms. So we have two women that have the same body, same birthday, but two totally different characteristics. And that is because the ba is something that you have to elevate yourself into. All right. So I said all of that to say that when we define the soul, we have an issue when it comes to language, because the Egyptians use multiple words to describe the divisions of the spirit, whereas westernized thought, like Christianity and even some of Islam, they don't really have a full division of the spirit breakdown in any of their books. They just say, oh, this is the soul, this is the spirit, this is God, and that's it. All right. So it's a lot deeper than that. So with all of that being said, now I want to define the word soul, because it's interesting, because it's comes from a Latin root, S-O-L, and S-O-L in Latin means sun. Even in Spanish, it still means sun. And according to this website, ultimately from the Proto-Indo-European sohwal. And that's where we get the meaning of sun from. Now, notice that the word soul is pronounced S-O-L, and it means sun, but it has different meanings based on what language you translate it into. Now, with all of that being said, I want to introduce everybody to the bird that represents the ba in the Medu Neter, the Jabiru bird, or the Jabiru macteria, which is a stork. And this bird is found in the Americas as well. So this bird is found on every major continent: Africa, America, and Central America as well. Usually in Texas, but it has also been reported in Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. It is most common in the Pantano region of Brazil and the eastern Chaco region of Paraguay. It is the only member of the genus Jabiru, and the name comes from the Tupi-Guarani language, which is one of the most widely distributed languages in the Tupian language family of South America. And basically, it translates to swollen neck. All right, so what an interesting name for this bird, and what a rich cultural history behind this bird. And just some quick facts about this bird is that this bird, the Jabiru bird, is the tallest flying bird in South America and Central America, often standing nearly the same height as the flightless and much heavier greater rhea bird. All right. Also, sexual dimorphism is high in this species, possibly the highest of any stork, with males being about 25% larger than females, right? So, all of that being said, as far as their environment, they usually live in large groups near rivers and ponds. They eat frogs, fish, snakes, snails, insects, and other invertebrates. And they are solitary nesters. They build massive nests, as you can see here. This is what their nest looks like. So this is a very intelligent bird. It's very intelligent, it's tall, and it's very fitting from anyone that's actually been in nature. When you observe birds, you start to learn their different characteristics and their different personalities. So with that in mind, now let's define the ba and the ka and the sahu, and then we're going to analyze the story. All right. So here we go. That's it. Now, this is from this book, Nuk on the Tear by Ra'u Nefer Amen. He basically broke it down in the most simplest fashion that you could think of. Basically, he broke down that the spirit is divided into 7 different vehicles. So just imagine 7 vehicles, 7 different cars, let's say a Tesla, a Camaro, a Challenger, a Toyota, a Maserati, a Challenger, and let's say a Ford. So we got 7 different vehicles. We're focusing on the Ba because this is the spiritual vehicle wherein dwell the spiritual laws that must govern man's life, and the Asar faculty. So Cyrus, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, Osiris is basically the conscious within you. So every man, every woman has his own conscious, and every man, every woman has his own God, and that God is Asa. So it is the divine spirit in man. When consciousness, the self, is elevated to this vehicle, oneness with God and all is achieved. Man shares in God's omnipresence and is therefore able to influence all creatures in the world through his or her will, given the fact that he or she is present, although not consciously, in all other creatures. The Ba is the vehicle of immortality, right? Now, that's a very key statement right there, because when you talk about the soul, a lot of people think that, oh, if the body dies, the soul dies. And, there's this issue we have when we exist in third dimension. When we see a body pass away, we think that means the soul also passes away. But that's an illusion based on our limited capacity to see in the visible light spectrum. So again, the Ba is the vehicle of immortality. It is the same thing as the Atman in the Hindu tradition. It is the same thing as the Yi in the Chinese tradition. It is the same as the Ifa in the Ifa West African tradition. So what all throughout different cultures, there's different names for this part of the spirit. In Egypt, it is called the Ba. All right. Now, since most people have not experienced this part of being, they take the Sahu, one of the lower parts of being, to be their soul. So when I read that, I was like, that was very interesting, because when you think about this idea of like a false soul, if you go in life and you believe that this is you and you identify with your person and you say, yeah, I have been through this event. I have been hurt by this person. I have been wronged by that person. I've had this traumatic experience, and my grandfather and grandmother were slaves, and my great grandfathers and my great grandmothers were stolen from Africa, and I just have nothing but trauma in my blood. You know what I'm saying? So that's the Sahu. That's what's programmed by your experiences. But there's something above the Sahu. And this kind of reminds me of the research that Carl Pribram did about the brain and how consciousness is much deeper than the brain. So we're going to talk about holonomic brain theory just for a brief moment, because I feel like it's relevant to what we're discussing. So let me stop sharing this and start sharing this. So for those of you who don't know who Carl Pribram is, this is Carl Pribram. I didn't even know he passed away in 2015. Rest in peace to him. But he was a brain researcher and also a professor of psychology and psychiatry. And basically, he developed this holonomic brain model of cognitive function. And basically, what it means is that they were trying to look at the brain and figure out what part of the brain is responsible for emotion, what part of the brain is responsible for dreams, what part of the brain is responsible for thought. And they actually removed different parts of the brain, right? Because they thought, okay, this is where the occipital lobe is, this is where smelling occurs. So we're going to remove that part of the brain, and this person should no longer be able to smell, right? But what actually happened is that they actually still were able to smell, even with these different missing parts of the physical brain. It's like the brain was a whole thing. So even if this part was missing, they could still smell. They still had memories. They still knew who their family was. They didn't lose memory at all, basically. So I wanted to bring up that theory because the universe is a hologram. And the significance of the word hologram is that any part of the hologram with sufficient size contains the whole of the stored information, and the idea of non-locality. All right. And we talk about that when we talk about the ISIS thesis and the quantum existence of the netherworld. Now, we're not going to talk about all of that today, but we are going to talk about the Ba. So with all of that being said, let's review the story and talk about the nuances, the literary devices, and what we can learn from the story. All right, so I got the story pulled up now. I will pause the story periodically to give commentary on it. And this is a dispute between a man and his Ba. What is the Ba? From Nuke on Neter by Ra'u Nefer Amen. This audio presentation is read and voiced by Shakim Ra. It is provided to the public by Amen Ra University. Page 25, The Divisions of the Spirit. According to the Kemetic spiritual teachings, man or woman has 7 vehicles, 5 in the metaphysical region and 2 the physical, 1 electromagnetic and 2 molecular on the earthly plane. The Ba is a spiritual vehicle wherein dwell the spiritual laws that must govern man or woman's life and the Asar or Osiris faculty. It is thus the divine spirit in man and woman. When consciousness is elevated to this vehicle, oneness with God and all is achieved. Man shares in God's omnipresence and is therefore able to influence all creatures in the world through his or her will, given the fact that he or she is present, although not consciously, in all other creatures. The Ba is the vehicle of immortality as the receptacle for the laws that make up man's divine self-image. The Ba is man's true soul. Since most people have not experienced this part of being, they take the Sahu, one of the lower parts of being, to be their soul. All right, now let's stop there. Now, it reminded me of what Dr. Muata Ashby was talking about in his book, The Ra'u Nu Pert Im Heru. All right, and this is how he defines the Sahu. All right, so these are the glyphs for the Sahu. All right, I see it looks like a quail chick. I see a reed flax. I see an arm outstretched. I see a bolt over a door. And this kind of looks like an Ankh, but not exactly an Ankh. All right, so all of these images in mind, it's definitely an indicator that it has something to do with the animal nature, right? Because it has the bird here, and then this looks like a bull. And on the bull's back, it's carrying Osiris, right? So the hieroglyphs of the word Sahu are the doorbolt. So I was right about that, meaning the consonant S or Z. The arm, meaning the guttural sound Ain, which is interesting because when we talk about the Kabbalah, you have the Ain, you have the Ain Sof, and you have the Ain Sof Or. So I'm going to tie that to the Hebrew when I do another video. The intertwined flax consonant H, the chick is the vowel U, right? So this is a chick. I said a quail bird, but a quail chick or a chick is the same thing. The determinative cylinder seal, right? So that's this. This is a seal, right? And isn't it interesting that in Revelation, there are 7 seals, and in Kemet, there are 7 divisions of the Spirit, and the 7 seals were opened in the book of Revelation. So I'm correlating, and I'm basically showing, even just numerically and sonically, based on how the words are defined here, we can make connections with the Hebrew. The Sahu is therefore sometimes referred to as the glorious spiritual body in which the Ku and the Ba dwells. Hold on. The glorious spiritual body in which the Ku and the Ba dwells. When the elements of the person are integrated, i.e., the person moves toward or reaches enlightenment, the spiritual and mental attributes of the natural body are unified and deified. Interesting. So again, this is all about the unification, the union of the two lands, the unification of upper and lower Kemet, right? The unification of Horus and Set. This unification process is also a deification process, right? So it says here, the Sahu is the goal of all aspiration. It is the reason for human existence, to become God-like while still alive by spiritualizing one's physical aspects and thereby allowing these to become proper vessels for the higher aspects of the personality to unfold. Now that's powerful. Probably the best breakdown of the Sahu that I've ever seen. And now this brings me to the Bible. So let's talk about the Bible for a second, because what we're really talking about is the Hebrew. So I want to pull up Genesis in Hebrew so you guys can see this. So let me stop sharing this. And let's look at Genesis 1:26 in Hebrew. All right. So it says here, Wayomer Elohim, and God said, Naasha Adam Basalamenu, Kid Mutenu We Yerdu. Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Wa Yerdu Big Gat Hayam Ubeowop Hasamayim Uba Behema ubekal ha'ares, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the livestock, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Now, what's significant about this is that it says that we make man in our image according to our likeness. This is plural. Elohim is translated singular in English, but it's actually plural in Hebrew. Why is that? Because in traditional Judaism or Islam or Christianity, they tell you that God is monotheistic. But they have a hard time explaining why Elohim means more than one. Because if it was singular, it would say, Wayomer Elo Naase Adam Basel Manu Kid Mutenu. It would be Elo, because that's the singular word for God in Hebrew. Or it could be Adonai, but it's not, it's Elohim. So even from whether you believe in Islam, Christianity, Judaism, it says here that God made man in our image and in our likeness. So therefore, the meaning of the Sahu can also be parallel with the meaning of Genesis in terms of the purpose of life and what the purpose of life is. So with all of that being said, let's go back to the story. From the mystic chapters of the Ra'u Nu Pert Imheru, the Ancient Egyptian Book of Enlightenment by Dr. Muata Ashby, page 135. The hieroglyphic symbol of the Ba is the Jabiru bird. The Jabiru is a stork. It symbolizes the nature of the soul to spread its wings and take flight and exist apart from the body. The Ba is the heart or soul which dwells in the Ka with the power of metamorphosis. Sometimes described as the soul and higher self, it is seen as a spark from the universal Ba. The Ba may be dialogued with and can be a spiritual guide to the developing individual. It is the equivalent of the Hindu Atman or Atman. It is the indestructible, eternal, and immortal spark of life. It is not affected by anything that may happen to the senses, body, mind, or intellect, higher mind. Through the mind, the Ba, soul consciousness projects and keeps together an aggregate of physical elements, earth, air, water, and fire, in a conglomerate that is called the psychophysical personality. When the soul has no more use for the physical body, it discards it and returns to the universal Ba, if it is enlightened. If it is not enlightened, it will tune into another aggregate of elements to make another body, or reincarnation. The dispute between a man and his Ba, Papyrus Berlin, 3024. All right. This famous, before we start the story, it actually reminded me of the Upanishads for a second, because basically he made the equivalency between the Ba and the Atman. So I'm going to read a little bit of the Upanishads, because that's what I cover in my Ancient Egypt, India class. So if you're not familiar with the Upanishads, you definitely want to get familiar with it. So it says here, all this, whatsoever exists in the universe, should be covered by the Lord. Having renounced the unreal, enjoy the real. Do not covet the wealth of any man. If one should desire to live in this world 100 years, one should live performing karma, righteous deeds. Thus, thou may live. There is no other way. By doing this, karma, the fruits of thy actions, will not defile thee. After leaving their bodies, they who have killed the self go to the worlds of the asuras, covered with blinding ignorance. Now notice it says that they killed the self. Because of their ignorance, they have killed themselves. And we're not talking about a physical death. We're talking about a spiritual death. And this is why enlightenment is so important. Continuing, it says that one, though motionless, is swifter than the mind. The senses can never overtake it, for it ever goes before. Though immovable, it travels faster than those who run. By it, the all pervading air sustains all living beings. It moves and it moves not. It is far and also it is near. It is within and also it is without all this. He who sees all beings in the self and the self in all beings, he never turns away from it. He who perceives all beings as the self, for him, how can there be delusion or grief when he sees this oneness everywhere? And so the harmony between the Indian text, the Bible, and the Egyptian text is clear. And to me, I'm able to make a lot of connections based on what I'm reading here. Now let's continue. This text is preserved in a single manuscript, which dates from the 12th dynasty. The first portion is missing. In its present form, it consists of 155 vertical columns, broken by a number of lacunae. An exceedingly difficult and intriguing work, it has engendered a great deal of controversy. In translating it for this anthology, I had two choices: to provide sentence by sentence summaries and discussions of the widely diverging translations and interpretations. This would have required many pages of annotations, or to dispense with notes altogether. I have chosen the latter course. Scholars familiar with the text know its problems. Those unfamiliar with it who wish to study it in detail are advised to consult all translations and commentaries. My translation owes much to that of Faulkner, though I differ from him on a number of points, especially on the rendering of the crucial word ihim, where I hold with those scholars who take it to mean lead toward, not hold back from. Given the variety of interpretations, I ought to refrain from a general discussion of the meaning of the work and content myself with a bald and brief sketch of what I believe to be its plot. A man who suffers from life longs for death. Angered by his complaints, his Ba threatens to leave him. This threat fills the man with horror, for to be abandoned by his Ba would mean total annihilation instead of the resurrection and immortal bliss that he envisages. He therefore implores his Ba to remain with him and not to oppose him in his longing for death, a death that he does not appear to contemplate as a suicide, but rather as a natural, though greatly welcome death. He says, to be followed by a traditional burial. The Ba counters his pleas by telling him that death is a sad business, and that those who have fine tombs are no better off than those who have none at all. His Ba urges him to stop complaining and to learn how to enjoy life. And then it tells him two parables designed to drive home the point that life is worth living. The man's final answer is delivered through four exquisite poems, in which he deplores the miseries of life and exalts death and resurrection. In a brief concluding speech, the Ba agrees to remain with them throughout all eternity. As I see it, the work is composed of a mixture of the three main styles of Egyptian literature: prose, symmetrically structured speech, and lyric poetry. All right, so there's a lot to take away from what we just went over, but in summary, there's a lot of problems with this text because the first portion of the text is missing. And as I said before, we only have a single manuscript to go off of. So texts like this were ubiquitous in ancient Kemet, probably were copied thousands of times, discussed, analyzed, and used in scribal schools over and over and over again. we only have one surviving copy. And even in that surviving copy, Egyptologists translate certain words differently, like the word ihim. Faulkner says that it means to move away from, and likhim is saying it means to move toward. So there are some nuances in the diction that will vary based on who's translating it. But I think that that's the beauty of the text, is that, it's kind of open for you to basically interpret it and to take from the story what you need to take from the story. Instead of a hard word for word translation, I think I enjoy just listening to the story, and what the story said to me may not be what the story said to you. Okay. So all that being said, this story is excellent, and I always teach this story because it has the three main styles of Egyptian literature: prose, symmetrically structured speech, and lyric poetry. So it's very rare to find all three literary styles in one text, especially a short text like this. Usually you might see that in a much longer poem like the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Enuma Elish, or even, like the Upanishads. But this is a very short work. But in this short work, it uses so many different literary devices to basically cause contemplation on the meaning of the story from within you. So whatever you get from this story is from what's already within your soul or your ba. Let's continue. Your, in order to say their tongue is not partial, a payment. Their tongue is not partial. I opened my mouth to my ba to answer what it had said. This is too great for me today. My ba will not converse with me. It is too great for exaggeration. It is like deserting me. My ba shall not go. It shall not attend to me in this, in my body with the net of cord. It shall not be able to flee on the day of pain. Look, my ba misleads me. I do not listen to it. Drags me toward death before I come to it. Casts me on fire so as to burn me. It shall be near me on the day of pain. It shall stand on that side as does a falcon. It is he who comes forth. He has brought it himself. My ba, too ignorant to steal pain in life, leads me toward death before I come to it. Notice he says, my ba, too ignorant to steal pain in life, leads me toward death before I come to it. So he's having this conversation with his soul. And he said, life is full of suffering, full of pain. And now I feel like my ba has completely deserted me. And so he's basically contemplating, why did my ba leave me? Why did my soul leave me? Because, there's a lot of people walking around who are already dead inside. You don't have to die physically to be dead on the inside. And that's basically how this man is feeling. So notice how he's feeling. This is the start of the story. The first portion is missing. So we're kind of getting, maybe like 2 conversations into this whole book. But notice what the boss says in response. Sweeten the West for me. Is that difficult? Life is a passage. Trees fall. Tread on the evil. Put down my misery. May Tahuti judge me, he who appeases the Netcharu. May Kansu defend me, he who writes truly. May Ra hear my speech, he who calms the sunbark. May Istis defend me in the sacred hall, for my suffering is too heavy a burden to be borne by me. May it please the Netcharu and repel my body's secret. Then my boss said to me, are you not a man? Are you not alive? What do you gain by complaining about life like a man of wealth? I said, I will not go as long as this is neglected. Surely, if you run away, you will not be cared for. Every criminal says, I shall seize you. Though you are dead, your name lives. Yonder is the place of rest, the heart's goal. The West is a dwelling place, a voyage. If my Ba listens to me without malice, its heart in accord with me, it shall be happy. I shall make it reach the West, like one who was in his tomb, whose burial a survivor tends. I shall make a shelter over your corpse, so that you will make envious another Ba in weariness. I shall make a shelter, it shall not be freezing, so that you will make envious another Ba which is hot. I shall drink water at the pond over which I made shade, so that you will make envious another Ba that hungers. But if you lead me toward death in this manner, you will not find a place on which to rest in the West. Be patient, my Ba, my brother, until my heir comes, one who will make offerings, who will stand at the tomb on the day of burial, having prepared the bier of the graveyard. Now, what his boss said to him was so simple but so profound. He said, "Are you not a man? Are you not alive?" And you have to remember that he's longing for death. He's already said, my suffering is too great. You're already misleading me toward death anyway. And I'm already feeling like death is before me today. And that's where the poetry is going to come in, which I really, really love, the lyric poetry and how it's symmetrically structured. You're going to see that in a second. But it really makes you step back and reflect on life and say, wow, I am a man and I am alive. So why am I complaining? And that's basically what his boss says to him. Why are you complaining like a man of wealth? You know what I mean? So a lot of times we complain and complain and complain, and we think about all the things in life that are wrong. We think about how evil the world is. It's so easy to get caught up in that. But what the Ba is admonishing him is to focus on the fact that he is alive, that he does have a purpose. And he's saying, you know what, Ba, if you stick with me until my heir comes, I will make all of these wonderful offerings to you, and we will reunite with each other in the West, which is the place of rest. All right. It is the goal for every initiate to get to the great West or the Duat. So you're seeing early conceptions of the netherworld. You're seeing early, how do I say this? You're seeing the early perspective of the Egyptians on the afterlife as well. So let's continue. My Ba opened its mouth to me to answer what I had said. If you think of burial, it is heartbreak. It is the gift of tears by grieving a man. It is taking a man from his house, casting him on high ground. You will not go up to see the sun. Those who built in granite, who erected halls in excellent tombs of excellent construction, when the builders have become gods, their offering stones are desolate, as if they were the dead who died on the riverbank for lack of a survivor. The flood takes its toll. The sun also. The fishes at the water's edge talk to them. Listen to me. It is good for people to listen. Follow the feast day. Forget worry. A man plowed his plot. He looked. All right, so now he's about to give him some parables. Now, before he gives him these parables, he tells him to forget worry, which is essentially the law of Amen, which states that your divine nature is peace, and that your natural response to all challenges in life is peace. And this is a law that Rao Nephramen teaches in the Auset society. So he basically tells them, forget worry. Now, when you tell somebody that, let's say you're talking to somebody that's grieving, somebody that just lost a loved one, can you imagine telling somebody that's grieving, that's in anguish, that's distressed, forget worry? Would it sound insensitive to tell that to somebody who is in anguish? Perhaps. But this is a conversation he's having with his own soul. So the soul doesn't mince words. It doesn't sugarcoat anything. It doesn't try to protect your human feelings or your Sahu. The Ba is much higher than the Sahu. So basically the Ba is saying, forget worry. Stop complaining. Stop, distressing over life. Remember that you are alive and that I'm with you and that you're trying to get to a place of rest. And now the Ba's about to tell him some parables. And now it's interesting about the parables. If you listen to them, they're going to sound similar to some parables of Christ that you may have seen in the Gospels. So it's just very interesting. Again, we're making all of these correlations between the Hebrew. We did that in the beginning. We made the correlations with India. We did that towards the middle. And now we're making correlations with the Greek or the Coptic or the New Testament era of Christology. Let's continue. Loaded his harvest into a boat. He towed the freight. As his feast day approached, he saw rising the darkness of a north wind. Watching in the boat as the sun went down, he came out with his wife and children and found it on the lake, infested at night with crocodiles. When at last he sat down, he broke out saying, I do not weep for that mother, for whom there is no coming from the west for another being on earth. I grieve for her children, broken in the egg, who have seen the face of the crocodile before they have lived. A man asked for an early meal. All right, so that was the first parable. And that parable was basically a woman who was on a boat. I'm assuming she was pregnant. And apparently, she got ate up by crocodiles. And this man, after the sun goes down, he reflects on the situation. And he's like, you know what? I don't grieve over that woman. I grieve over her children who are broken in the egg. And he's talking about the fact that these souls had traveled so far from wherever they came from to try to come down here to this realm. And before they could even be born, they were broken in the egg by the crocodile. So there's many different levels to this metaphor that you can interpret the crocodile as. The crocodile could even be the lack of opportunity to even live, right? And so he's telling them this story because he's saying, my suffering is too great. Life is full of pain and misery and woe. But the soul is telling him, there are children that didn't even make it to the birth stage. There are babies and toddlers and all kind of souls that didn't even get the opportunity to grow into a fully developed human being or an adult. And you're sitting up here complaining and longing for death. So I love that story. Now let's listen to the next story. His wife said, it is for supper. He went outdoors to a while. When he came back to the house, he was like another person. His wife beseeches him, and he does not listen to her. I opened my mouth to my ba to end. All right, so that was a really short story. It's kind of clanky because it's missing some lines, but it talks about how a man asked his wife to make dinner. And so she's making the dinner, she's cooking, she's making a full meal for her husband. He left, he went to the woods, and he came back for dinner. But he didn't even remember who his wife was. He didn't have any connection to her. And it was like a different person had took over his body. So she basically lost her husband, not physically, but his soul was missing. And so that's another story of how important it is to know what the soul is, because the body could still be here, but if you don't have the connection to the soul anymore, who are you going to sit down and have a dinner with? Who are you going to sit down and have intimacy with when you don't have any connection to this person? Their body is right here. Their body's right here with you. But it's like talking to someone, maybe like, let's say an ex or something, and that connection just isn't there anymore. And this happened in a day. He told her to make dinner. She started making the dinner. He left for a couple hours and came back a different person. So that's another great story, a great short story as well. Let's continue. Answer what it had said. Lo, my name reeks. Lo, more than carrion smell on summer days of burning sky. Lo, my name reeks. Lo, more than a catch of fish on fishing days of burning sky. Lo, my name reeks. Lo, more than ducks smell, more than reed coverts of waterfowl. Lo, my name reeks. Lo, more than fishermen smell, more than the marsh pools where they fish. Lo, my name reeks, lo, more than crocodiles smell, more than a shore site full of crocodiles. Lo, my name reeks, lo, more than that of a wife about whom lies are told to the husband. Lo, my name reeks, lo, more than that of a sturdy child who is said to belong to one who rejects him. Lo, my name reeks, lo, more than a king's town that utters sedition behind his back. To whom shall... All right, so that was the first line of lyric poetry. And he uses this line, my name reeks, over and over and over. It's a literary device to show you with a metaphor how seriously he is about how his name reeks, right? And so your name reeking could just be you feeling like you're not loved or you're not valued or you're not needed or you're not appreciated or maybe even that you're hated. So the metaphors and the similes here are rich when he compares the stench of his name to the stench of fishermen, or when he compares the stench of his name to a king whose subjects are plotting to overturn him. He compares the stench of his name to a wife whose husband has been told lies about her. You know what I'm saying? So these metaphors and these similes are rich and they paint a very vivid picture of the emotional state of the protagonist in this story. Let's continue. Shall I speak today? Brothers are mean. The friends of today do not love. To whom shall I speak today? Hearts are greedy. Everyone robs his comrade's goods. To whom shall I speak today? Kindness has perished. Insolence assaults everyone. To whom shall I speak today? One is content with evil. Goodness is cast to the ground everywhere. To whom shall I speak today? He who should enrage men by his crimes. He makes everyone laugh at his evildoing. To whom shall I speak today? Men plunder. Everyone robs his comrade. To whom shall I speak today? Brothers are mean. One goes to strangers for affection. To whom shall I speak? I love this literary device again. So first it was death is before me today. My name reeks. And now the literary device is to whom shall I speak today? Now that's a powerful literary device because when people talk about therapy, they say, you know, sometimes you just need somebody to talk to. Or when he talks about to whom shall I speak to today, people are turning to strangers for affection. Brothers don't treat each other like brothers. And basically it's just mourning the condition of the world and how awry the world is. And basically he feels like he has no one to speak to. So because he has no one to speak to, he's speaking to his soul, his ba. Let's continue. Speak today. Faces are blank. Everyone turns his face from his brothers. To whom shall I speak today? Hearts are greedy. No man's heart can be relied on. To whom shall I speak today? None are righteous. The land is left to evildoers. To whom shall I speak today? One lacks an intimate. One resorts to an unknown to complain. To whom shall I speak today? No one is cheerful. He with whom one walked is no more. To whom shall I speak today? I am burdened with grief for lack of an intimate. To whom shall I speak today? Wrong roams the earth and ends not. Death is before me today, like a sick man's recovery, like going outdoors after confinement. Death is before me today, like the fragrance of myrrh, like sitting under sail on a breezy day. Death is before me today, like the fragrance of lotus, like sitting on the shore of drunkenness. Death is before me today, like a well-trodden way, like a man's coming home from warfare. Death is before me today, like the clearing of the sky, as when a man delivers what he ignored. Death is before me today, like a man's longing to see his home when he has spent many years in captivity. Truly, he who is yonder will be a living netcher, punishing the evildoer's crime. Truly, he who is yonder will stand in the sunbark, making its bounty flow to the temples. Truly, he who is yonder will be a wise man, not barred from appealing to Ra when he speaks. Then my boss said to me, "Now throw complaints on the woodpile. You, my comrade, my brother, whether you offer on the brassiere, whether you bear down on life, as you say, love me here when you have set aside the West. But when it is wished that you attain the West, that your body joins the earth, I shall alight after you have become weary, and then we shall dwell together. It is finished from beginning to end, as it was found in writing." All right. I love the ending of this story so much because it's so rich in metaphors. And I just love the metaphors that are in this story. He said, death is before me today, like the clearing of the sky, like a man who has spent many years in captivity coming home. And it's like you have these moments in life where this day is coming, but you just never know when it's coming. But when it does come, you're like, wow, this day has finally come. And that's what they're basically using as a literary device here, the suddenness of the day being here. But the Ba is basically saying, throw all your complaints on the wood pile. Like, you have a pile of wood and you just take all of your complaints and just throw them on the pile. Because this soul or this man is complaining that he doesn't have an intimate, he doesn't have his brothers anymore. Those who once walked with him are no more. The world is evil, etc., etc. He can go on and on and on about how evil the world is and how hard life is and how much he has suffered. But the boss says, throw your complaints on the woodpile. And earlier he said, forget worry. So in summary, the story uses many different literary devices, like we talked about: prose, symmetrically structured speech, and lyric poetry, rhetorical devices designed to get the reader to reflect. And that's why I said this story is rich, because you may take something else from the story totally different from what I took from the story. But I took from the story essentially that it's no good in complaining. When you are alive, you have a purpose. And if you are still alive, there is something that you are here to do. And there's something that I am here to do. And when you have that mindset of complaining and negativity and how hard life is and how much you've suffered, when you have that mindset, it cuts you off from your ba, and you're not able to have that conversation with your soul anymore. So yeah, this is one of my favorite stories from ancient Egypt. I teach this story every year, and whenever I'm going through something, and like if I lose somebody close to me, if I start feeling like I need to talk to somebody, if I start feeling any of these things, I always go back and I read this story, and it always brings me back home to myself. All right. So I enjoyed this story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna read some of your comments. I see Breaking the Cultures here. Happy New Year to you, Breaking. You need to be doing voiceover work. Yep, I'm definitely doing a lot of voiceover work right now. Actually, shout out to P, the panel killer, and shout out to Keeping It Plain for being here. I appreciate you guys. So I want you guys to watch this, analyze this, and give yourself some homework. Are there some questions that you may have? Are there any connections? Does this story remind you of any other stories? What lessons can we learn from the dispute between a man and his ba? And what literary devices enabled this story to have an effect on the reader. For me, it was the lyric poetry, the "to whom shall I speak today" being repeated with different metaphors and similes. My name reeks more than a fisherman's net. Those type of metaphors, I can smell what he's talking about as he's describing his experience and how he feels. So those metaphors really made the story come alive for me. And I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.